10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
Oh, it's that time again. Paul Chandler's going to start this whole thing he does. It's called the Shy Life Podcast. It's probably going to start any minute now. Anyway, I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, sit back and relax.
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
It's the quiet ones you've got to watch, you know.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Good boy. He's got all that shy is right.
Blimey, Governor. It's the Shy Life Podcast.
Excellent.
579.
Bonjour et bienvenue au podcast The Shy Life.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life Podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How you doing? I'm all right. We've got a special guest this episode. Oh yes. Well, who is it? Well, of course, the episode title may have given it away, but at time of recording, the regulars don't know who the special guest is going to be. So I'm going to see if they can guess. But anyway, you can play along at home. But first, we need to run the theme music. Okay, run that theme music.
Darling, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Yes, but it's supposed to be simple. The highlights, the Shy Life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
Hello, Paul.
I'll go anywhere if I can change it.
Delicious.
Hello, Campers. How are you?
You quite like a big bang, don't you, Paul?
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. If he has.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Oh, I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life Podcast.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm strangely drawn to Yeti Uncle John's ankles as well.
But has the Shy Life Podcast slowed down? I don't think so.
It's all gooey and meaty and yum.
Has anyone seen my hot sausage?
Hello. So, Cromitty, who do you think it is? Who do you think it is? Who do I think it is? I don't know. Who do I think is what? Oh, the special guest this episode. Oh, have you not already given it away? No, I've not given it away. No, not already. Come on. Well, instinctively, I want to say Queen Victoria, but I guess that's unlikely. Yeah, it's kind of unlikely. What about Christopher Columbus? You do know that this is a guest on the show, not like a theme of an episode. Not that I'm ever likely to do an episode on Christopher Columbus, although he may pop up in a quiz. Pop up in a quiz, Paul. I just want you to suggest somebody who is the guest of this episode. Oh, okay, right. What about Madame Cholet? Madame Cholet? What, from the Wombles? Yes, I mean, I'd love if you spoke to her. Madame Cholet from the Wombles. A fictional character. Not that stopped us before now, but... No, Paul, why are you whispering? Nothing, not at all. Okay, well, I think you've had your three guesses. Queen Victoria... Oh, no, but they said it probably wasn't her. So not Queen Victoria, Christopher Columbus, or Madame Cholet. Yes, but don't they get one more go? Because they said because they said no to Queen Victoria. All right, go on then. Winnie the Pooh. No, none of those. Okay, well, you'll wait and see, eh? Yes, I wait and see with bated breath. Good, get that breath baited. Oh, yes, Paul. Yes. I'm going to ask somebody else now. Oh, okay, Paul.
Well, all the people I was going to suggest were people from other planets, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they are who you're speaking to. No aliens. No aliens this time. Sorry, Ick. If you want to suggest anybody. I may well do that. Yes. Sister Who and I were talking about it just the other day.
Well, cool. I mean, we certainly haven't got a policy against having aliens on the show.
I don't think I like the word alien, Paul.
No, sorry, that's probably disrespectful. Otherworldly beings, extraterrestrials?
I have a think. I'm not sure what is the, approved term for myself these days. Or my people. Well, they're not my people, but people from off Earth.
Off-Earthers?
Maybe. So who could it be? Is it Warren? Uncle Warren?
Uncle Warren is not, I guess. No. No, not this time.
Okay, is it Nick Goodman?
No, Nick's not on this episode. Although, that was a good guess.
And not Callum?
No, not that I know of. Not unless there's room for a quiz, but I'm not sure. I mean, no.
Well, that's my 3 guesses then. Oh gosh, I wonder who it could be.
Look, Ick, you've done far better than Cromitty did. He suggested Queen Victoria, and then he went back on it. Christopher Columbus.
Oh, the Explorer.
Well, yeah. Who else did he say? Madame Cholet.
Madame Cholet.
Oh, don't worry, a fictional character from the Wombles. I mean, yeah, she's cool and everything, but probably not my favourite Womble.
Okay, Paul.
And then Winnie the Pooh was suggested.
Oh, Winnie the Pooh, I think I met him once.
Did you? Okay.
Oh well, it wasn't any of those either.
No, it wasn't any of them either. So,
How many other people are you going to ask, Paul?
Probably just Yeti Uncle John. I think after that I'll have lost the will to live.
Yes, Paul. I'll let you get on with it.
Thanks. Oh, who do I think it could be? Who do I think the guest could be? Magpies? Magpies. Who do you think? Oh, yes. All right. Could be. What did they say, Yeti Uncle John? Well, they have suggested, are you sure? Is that your first guess? Gosh, if even you are unsure about the Magpies choice. Can I have a choice and the Magpies? I thought the Magpies were acting as your advisors. Yes, I'm just not sure. It's Oliver Cromwell has been suggested. Surprised the Magpies know who Oliver Cromwell is. They're very educated. They often speak to, Lisa Parker from around the archives. She's very knowledgeable. She is indeed. She's talked about history on this show more than once. But knowing who Oliver Cromwell is, or being educated to who Oliver Cromwell is, doesn't make him the guest on the show. You're sliding down the same slippery slope as Cromitty by suggesting people who have been dead for many, many, many years. Hear that, Magpies? Yeah, think again. Go on. Ask them for another suggestion. Magpies, another suggestion, please. Something a bit more, something a bit more realistic. Good idea. All right. Yes. No, fair enough. Yeah. All right. Sure. Okay. All right. Who are they suggesting? And before you say anything, Kylie and Madonna are probably out of our price range. No, they didn't suggest Kylie or Madonna. Oh, good. Who are they suggesting? The actress Olivia Colman. The actress Olivia Colman, I think she's out of our price range too. Apparently not. She's a big fan of being on podcasts. Really? Are you sure? I still don't think she'd be on our podcast. Nice idea, but no, it's not Olivia Colman. Although I would love it to be. Yes, okay. Magpies, Paul, at least she's alive. She's alive, yeah. Magpies at least are working a bit more, yeah. I mean, I'd like to say that the guest we have is as good or better than any of the people that have been named so far. I would rather have this guest on my show than Oliver Cromwell. Well, that's a bold claim, yes, and Christopher Columbus. I don't know what I'd say to these people. Madame Cholet. I mean, I don't know. I think our guest can cook. Whether he can... Ooh, I said he. Oh dear, Paul, you've given it away. I haven't given it away. There's a lot of he's out there. Yes, I suppose so. Yeah, I'm just thinking, is he as good a cook as Madame Cholet, a fictional Womble? Stop using that word, Paul. What, Womble? No, fictional. You say it like it's a bad thing. Say it like it's a bad thing. Come on. The guest is ready to arrive. He is ready to arrive. He is. One more go. Oh, sorry. Magpies, one last go. Come on now. Do you think so? Are you sure? Oh, I think you're taking a risk with this one, Magpies. Oh, all right. I suggest it. Oh, it's all right. They've not suggested Jack the Ripper, have they? No, Paul, that's distasteful. No, they haven't. Who have they suggested? Paul, it's the Magpies, suggestion. Yeah, but the Magpies are speaking for you, Yeti Uncle John. It was your idea to use them. Yeah, all right. The Magpies suggest the Scarlet Pimpernel. No, it's not the Scarlet Pimpernel. Magpies, Yeti Uncle John. Oh, darn it. Darn it, yes. Well, I will reveal that our guest is a guest who has been on the show before and who has contributed many messages, much music during 2022. It is the one, the only Muffley on Tour. Muffley on Tour. I didn't think he'd come back. What do you mean? Oh, he was on the show before. I mean, he wants more. Is he a glutton for punishment? You come back on the show for more. Yeah, but I kind of have to, don't I? Oh, Uncle John, please. You sport my announcement. Listeners, we have Muffley on Tour and he's coming up now. And yes, he did agree to come back on the show a second time. Oh dear. Times must be hard. Uncle John, you're so horrible. Oh no, what's it saying? Okay.
How are you doing?
Very well. Good afternoon. I know we spoke earlier online, and I was saying how I was going to have an easy day, a nice, easy, quiet day, and completely failed to do that because I ended up going for a run, doing some music, and doing some shopping, food shopping, and doing some cooking. So failed miserably. I definitely think there's an art to doing nothing.
You should tell me you're going to do lots of things and then not do them. Do the opposite. If you're going to do the opposite, you can.
I know. So it's definitely there must definitely be an art to it, like sort of literally doing nothing rather than just like getting distracted into sort of doing sort of this, that, and the other. Just being able to sit on the sofa and do the crossword or read a book. So definitely that age-old thing. I think I need to slow down.
Easier to do creative things, but going for a jog, you can't do that by accident. You can't accidentally start doing a jog, really. So,
Well, it's interesting because on the creative front, I've been sort of dabbling with a few bits of music this weekend, and nothing's really sort of completely clicked into place. It's one of those things when you're doing something, you've got a few germs of ideas, but they're not like sort of, home runs, if you want to call them that. So you start sort of tinkering away with them and then tinkering away with them a bit more. And that was the case yesterday. I'd been doing some music for about an hour or so, and I just stopped because it was just like sort of not really getting anywhere. And then when I did some music this morning, it was actually sort of what I decided to do was go for the run to clear my head. And sometimes, probably like you with walking, sometimes when I go for a run or whatever, or if I'm hiking in the lakes, you can have your best ideas, or it sort of like clears the decks a bit, basically. So, I mean, not that I did much more with the music, but it made me sort of realise, well, that thing you did yesterday was a bit of a waste of time, so let's just bin that. And then the thing you've been working on today, the start bit's okay, but you're sort of getting into a bit of cliche territory, so don't bother with the rest of it. So even though I haven't created anything, I've kind of started the journey to creating something, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I've had that a couple of times where I'm quite good at adapting. If things are going wrong, I'll turn them into, like, going back to the days of Sutton Park, in the middle of a scene, the Metallic Man's fingers, which were just like one of those grabby hands, all snapping off on camera. And I just kept on filming and kind of came up with, he was going to then go and lie and tell somebody he'd been attacked. But I remember we were doing a Chatterbox episode. I think it was a Chatterbox episode. No, actually, no, it was back in lockdown when we were doing around the archives, the extra episodes. And for some reason, somebody's feed didn't record. So I asked Troby if I could just...
Did you say fee or feet? I know you've been obsessed by feet in the past, or Yeti Kajong's feet.
Yeah,
well, that's ankles, isn't it? Yeah. Someone's feet didn't record.
No, the feed.
The feed.
The feed, yeah, because everyone was recording separate tracks, and when one didn't come out, so it kind of spoilt the whole thing. It couldn't really be used. But I said to Troby, I think I can use it. So I think I had, I don't know, Ick or somebody filling in the lines. Or I think it was Nick's feed didn't go, and it was unfortunate because he'd never been on one of those live episodes. So, but I just replaced him with one of the regulars doing his lines. Well, what sort of guessing what he'd said. So we were still able to use it. But and then yesterday I was recording. So I was with my friend Simon, who took me out, and Simon said he'd be on the podcast. But when he started, he was really, really shy. So I didn't get that much of the recording done. So I've come up with an alternative. I've come up with something that will make it work, but it's not what I was thinking. But I don't think I've ever had a guest kind of get so shy that they stop talking. He did apologise, but
I can kind of appreciate that because just when I've been doing like the little sort of snippets when I've been away on my travels, there was times that I got sort of very self-conscious. Because you're just sort of recording into a microphone, and that there's going to be lots of people listening to it on the podcast, but also just you think, people are going to judge me that I'm on this holiday, I'm here on the other side of the world, this, that, and the other and stuff, and you just have to kind of sort of put all that to one side and just kind of, it's such a cliche, isn't it? But just be yourself, I guess.
I did record with an old university friend. The episode might have just come out by the time this episode comes out. And when I was looking at the two tracks, I was thinking, oh gosh, there is movement on his track, but did I just like talk the whole time and not give him a chance to say anything, or did I keep talking because I wasn't sure, sort of whether he had an answer, but I guess you get used to sort of having to talk a lot.
That's true, and maybe just with the last few years of talking not in front of people but with people. It's interesting because I've got a friend who, off camera, off mic, is just amazingly funny, does lots of voices, great at sort of improv and stuff. And I say to him, "Oh, you should do some stuff. Have you thought about doing some Amdram?" And he just completely clams out and says, "No, don't want to do it." It's very much just like his little private thing, and he's very, very unhappy with that. Along the same lines, with the theatre group that I'm involved with, not that I want to sort of put people on a sort of grading system, but one of the better actors that we've got, like, he's very impressive. When it comes to sort of workshopping things and improvising, he again just completely clams up, sort of say, "And you've got any ideas for this?" And like, "No," and just completely sort of turns into this other person. And it's very interesting how people can sort of be sort of absolutely amazing, but then be it shyness or just sort of a fear of sort of whatever makes them sort of clam up a bit. But
I've definitely got a few people I would have liked to have on the show, but I don't think it'll ever happen because they're like that off mic. They're like doing silly voices or whatever, and I think they've got things that are subjects that are also it's when you've got friends who have hobbies that are very different, because obviously we often have people on this show because we've got similar likes, or we like TV, or we like music. But I have a few friends who also have just like hobbies that I've never talked about. So it would be nice to kind of get them on for that reason. But
it's interesting because just as I was setting up for today, there's a bookcase behind me, and I was looking for a cable or whatever it was. Hello, Deals. I was looking for a cable, and whilst I was looking for it, I noticed all my, it's not a full set, but my Target books on the top of the shelf. And I was thinking, which one should I read? So, maybe I should field some suggestions from people, like what's a good Target book, or what are your favourite Target books? Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, I've been reading my first Agatha Christie in a long time. I read her books like mad when I was about 12 or 13. Yes, Dealey, come and say hello if you want to. And I haven't really. So I read lots of them. They're almost the first things I jumped from, like the kiddie books you were supposed to read at school to Agatha Christie, and then sort of didn't do the intermediary. I sort of went from one to another.
You didn't do Nancy Boys and. Was it not the Freudian slip? The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew.
I think I would have done if I'd have. I think I would have done if I'd. I would have done if I'd have. I don't know if I came across those. In fact, I've been reading a few. I've been reading the novel that inspired the film I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that was written for teenagers. And it's probably quite, I think, a bit different from the film. And the weird thing is, the copy I bought, although it was written in the 70s, it's been updated.
Sure.
So that there's talk of like GPS or mobile phones. So I guess there's not much else changed. But Deals, are you going to come and join? You're coming up. Come on then. Yeah.
Oh, hello, Deals.
Yes, we're talking to Muffy.
I think Monroe is outside on the shed. Monroe has a nemesis called Fluffy, who's another black cat.
Yeah.
Who keeps coming over. We think Fluffy wants to make friends, but Monroe's not having any of it at the moment. So there's a little bit of friction going on there.
Yeah.
Talking of reading, there's sort of parallels with you growing up in Salisbury, in the area of Salisbury, me in the area of Cambridge, because we lived in a village called Comberton, and it had, it's where our school was, our comprehensive school, Comberton Village College, which is still there. But it was like part of a sort of wider sort of community kind of thing, which included having like a library. So very much sort of, keen sort of purveyors of the library. And I'm trying to think what stuff I would get out. I remember, I think I had some Target books. I remember there was a Star Trek book called The Entropy Effect, which I never got. But I just always remember the cover. I'll have to Google it, or you'll have to Google it maybe, because it just had sort of quite sort of a bit like the Doctor Who New Adventures. It's sort of quite stylized versions of the main characters. And even to this day, I kind of feel like I should try and track it down at some point. But in our household, obviously this was all pre-Harry Potter's and what else. I always remember sort of there was all the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and my brother did the whole Lord of the Rings thing. In terms of Agatha Christie, yeah, I think my dad was very into Agatha Christie, and Dorothy L. Sayers as well was another one.
Yeah, I did. I remember doing some sort of a demonstration thing at school about, mainly about bell ringing, because I very briefly did bell ringing, but I was probably a little bit too young, really, and not really sort of big enough to be doing it. But there's a Dorothy L. Sayers one that's about bell ringing. And I think I probably talked a bit about bell ringing and a bit about that book. But I don't think I actually read the book all the way through, because I think some of those. I used to walk past an old bookshop on the way back from the school I went to for a couple of years, which was really good for sort of. I think it's one of those things where you collect books, but you don't necessarily get around to reading them for years after, if ever. You're spending your pocket money on them. But
it's interesting. Growing up in Cambridge, I'd go into town with my dad on a Saturday, and there was a bookseller that also had a stall at the market in Cambridge on a Saturday. And as a kid, I used to find this quite tedious, because my dad would be sort of leafing through the books. But obviously now, at my age, it's just absolute heaven, sort of rooting around and never quite knowing sort of what you're going to find. So, yeah, although I think it's probably because of sort of life events, I have sort of whittled down sort of the number of books I've got. I think when my dad died in 2013, 2013, we had a whole house to clear. So we took that opportunity to sort of get rid of quite a lot of things, to charity shops and what have you. And then I guess when Angelique moved in as well, we had that classic thing where you sort of got sort of duplicates of things. So got rid of stuff then. And I've still got sort of a fair few books, but nothing like sort of the mountains that I used to have. I mean, my obligatory to be read pile isn't as big as it used to be. Still sort of obviously fairly big, but not as bad as it used to be. But just going back to Agatha Christie, I think very much my parents were very, very fond of the Joan Hicks and Miss Marples. That was definitely their thing. Sunday night, a little glass of sherry, watching a Joan Hicks and Marple, that was their idea of heaven. And then nowadays we have the thing where Angelique, who is French, loves watching the Poirots. I mean, obviously everyone knows, I think, the Poirot character is Belgian. He does slip in, he's a French-speaking Belgian. But she absolutely loves watching Poirots. And obviously, pretty much any time of the day, there'll be like a Poirot on ITV3. And also, obviously, you got the stuff and catch up. But we've got the weird thing. We've got French TV. We've basically got the French equivalent of Freeview, and they have like Poirot. They have Midsummer Murders, which they call Inspector Barnaby, and there's a few other ones that they give slightly different names to. But it's quite strange watching Poirot on French TV dubbed into French. So yeah, it's a bit of a sort of mind bender. So
I used to watch the Joan Hicksons at the time, and I think I quite like to watch the one I'm reading at the moment, because I don't remember enough about them to know whether this is a typical one, but I think it's one of the last Miss Marples. I'm reading one called Nemesis.
Yes, and that was a pretty good one. Yeah, I remember it got hailed as a good one at the time.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot from her point of view and her thoughts, and some quite interesting, quite fun sort of descriptions of the characters she's meeting. At the moment, it's a bit like Miss Marple goes on carry on camping or something.
Yeah, she's on a big bus journey, isn't she? Yeah.
But we also used to like Bergerac a lot in our household. So
that didn't feature as much. My dad liked the Rockford Files and all things. He was not a fan of American TV at all. He hated it with a passion because he just thought it was all guns and car chases. But the one section, I think, maybe Columbo as well, was the Rockford Files, because it was more sort of character based, I think. So he enjoyed that.
Yeah. Well, we kind of like Bergerac because of we went to Jersey and Guernsey quite a lot in the 80s.
Sure.
When my brother came along, I think any chance of going on sort of holidays involving hotels was a bit out. It was easier to go to self-catering places with a screaming baby.
Sure.
And also Bergerac has a lot of Doctor Who connections.
It does indeed. I was just going to say, I've never been the biggest fan of the newer Marples that came out about 10 years ago because of the stunt casting. So it's a bit of sort of the John Nathan Turner syndrome, like, who who's well known to everybody can get in this role rather than sort of casting someone on their sort of talent alone. So I wasn't such a fan of the newer Marples, but yes, I have seen that with Bergerac. It's like, it's them, and it's Louise Jameson, and this, that, and that. So yes, very good point indeed.
And I'm also, when I'm reading my bits of my 1990 diary, I find I commented on particular episodes as they were being screened, which it's sort of funny how actually some people say, they've changed, in 30 years I've changed, you wouldn't recognise me. I mean I might look different, but when I'm reading my diary I'm like, yeah, I recognise myself. Sure. I still talk about all these subjects on the podcast now.
Sure. I remember, what was it, 1982 when Channel 4 started, if I'm correct? Was it 82?
Something like that, yeah.
Again, it used to be a bit of a sort of tradition that they were showing the Avengers, and sort of me, my brother and my dad would always like sit down to watch an episode of the Avengers. And that was always good, because my dad would sort of suddenly sort of produce like a mystery bar of chocolate or some muffins or crumpets that we'd have as our little treat. But my dad used to do that thing where, I don't know if I mentioned this before, because it obviously had Patrick Macnee as Steed. When Patrick Macnee was in anything else, if he was like guest starring in, I don't know, The Love Boat or Columbo, he just called him Steed. Said, Steed's in that thing tonight. And it's just like, I think he did the same with Tony Robinson, that whatever Tony Robinson was doing, he just referred to as Baldrick all the time. So when Time Team was on a Sunday evening, he said, Baldrick's on tonight. It's like, you mean Time Team? Yeah, Baldrick. It's like, I think I know what you're saying.
My parents let me down a bit with the Avengers. I just happened to stumble upon it being on, and then and I think I was vaguely aware of what it was, or remembered a comic strip from one of those comic strip magazines where I'd bought like the annual TV comic annual or something from a jumble sale. So I was kind of vaguely aware, and once I discovered it, I sort of, because I think it was on maybe on Saturday evenings at one point, and then it started being shown on Channel 4 at more like tea time.
I think it did change. Yes, that does ring a bell.
And I think they also showed them out of order, or they showed them more than once around that.
That's true.
I'm not even sure how early we got Channel 4. Don't know if we got it immediately, or whether we certainly didn't get Channel 5 till or where I was living at the time. We didn't get Channel 5. Not that there's that much that I want to see on Channel 5 generally, but
I think the Avengers was, ironically, because it was made by ABC, not ITC, it was definitely sort of opened the door to all that kind of ITC spy-fi stuff for me. So from there, I found out about the Champions and Department S and Jason King and what have you. I actually met Peter Wyngarde twice in my life, which was quite an experience both times. Yeah. He was very Peter Wyngarde, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
The second time he went off on an anecdote about how Peter O'Toole had gifted him a couple of Purdy rifles, and it was just like sort of like, it's like, just sort of, he was that sort of, because I knew that he was into sort of, he used to do sort of some shooting of some sort or whatever, that was his thing. And as soon as I mentioned that, his eyes lit up and he started, regaling me with this story. It's like, okay. But no, the Avengers, which of course Peter Wyngarde featured how many times? He was in A Touch of Brimstone, the black and white one, which was obviously sort of regarded as quite sort of saucy for the time. And then He was in Epic as well.
It was quite often that they would have them almost like once a season. I remember reading about when he was in Doctor Who and Planet of Fire, he wanted to be made up really old, and John Nathan Turner said, like, no, we want people to know it's you. There's no point casting you and sticking you in under loads of makeup.
You paid top dollar for all of that. So yeah, so yeah, it was very much sort of doorway to sort of other things. So yeah, and The Prisoner, of course. My brother was a bit older than me, so I think The Prisoner was also showing on Channel 4 around the time. So my brother would have been 15, 16. So very much kind of angsty teenager. So the whole sort of Number 6 kind of against the world would have been right up his street at the time. And it was, in terms of Doctor Who, it was, my brother went to the Doctor Who exhibition at Blackpool, and the reason I remember it so vividly is because he lost his coat there. So what was meant to be this, great experience for him back in whatever year it was turned a bit sour because he got a sort of a very sort of severe telling off for losing his coat. And I remember we all got frog marched into C&A to buy him another coat, and it was like sort of the reason we're here shopping is because your brother has lost his coat and he's very sort of reckless and can't sort of look after his own possessions. And so like that was my abiding memory of the Doctor Who, which I wasn't allowed to go to. Maybe I was too small at the time. I don't know. So
we were more familiar with the Longleat one because that's much closer to Salisbury. And then I went with my parents, and also then it got into in the 90s. It was a sort of an annual sort of pilgrimage with Dick and Troby and anybody else.
Seen the video, yes. I was very, very jealous. Yeah, I didn't really have anything like that, but. Going back to the thing about like secondhand bookshops or being on holiday, there was always, in the pre-video and DVD days, a frisson of excitement that if you're in this bookshop and they had like a Target book that you didn't have, especially if it was like a secondhand one, and it was like going for like 20p or 30p or something, it just like absolutely made your day. And then if we were like caravanning in Wales or wherever it was, you could just hide away and read your Doctor Who book instead of getting dragged out by your dad. Walking up a hill in the rain.
We used to have,
I do now.
We used to have mobile library come to the village, and I think I remember there being a time where I borrowed quite a lot, probably more than I should, but I'm not even sure I was of the age where I could necessarily read them that well on my own. I was that young, but it was more about the covers and having something that was Doctor Who.
Sure.
Before I eventually owned them myself, anyway. But
I think I was, because we're very close in age. It was similar for me, because I think my brother would been reading a few of the Target books. So again, I would have seen the covers when I was quite sort of small, but also you'd have the things where there'd be sort of Doctor Who promotions on packets of cereals and stuff, or like they'd give away free transfers and things that you could sort of, sort of play with and things. So that was probably more my introduction. I've got vague memories of watching it in the 70s. I can't, if I was to think about it, I can't remember the first Doctor Who I ever saw, but obviously I was just always aware of it. I can remember some specific Doctor Who's. I can remember the Keeper of Traken, because I remember the sort of the stone statue thing, and I was quite impressed with Nyssa even at that young age, I think, and that classic thing, sort of, again, people of our age, the Master was this Ainley bloke, and it was only sort of years later. Roger Delgado. Who's this Roger Delgado you're talking about? And then you see Roger Delgado. It's like, oh wow, that was that was definitive. That was amazing. So I think the Keeper of Traken, and I can for some reason remember watching The Visitation, where the Doctor loses his sonic screwdriver, because I was at my friend Owen Brown's house, and we're watching it there. I remember sort of watching that and cycling back to my house.
Trouble with the Davison seasons is, with them being on in the week, it sometimes clashed with things that my parents wanted me to do, like Cubs and all that sort of thing, and it became used as another reason for why I should leave Cubs, because I didn't want to miss Doctor Who, because you couldn't just video it back in those sort of years. It was all before that sort of thing, and it certainly was in our household anyway. It took a bit longer for us to get a video.
Yeah, do you remember what year you got a video? Because I can distinctly remember 1985 for us. And I can remember that because for my birthday, which was still is on the 13th of July, doesn't change. It was Live Aid. It was Live Aid on Saturday, 13th of July, 1985. And we just got a video, and it was treated with, great sort of reverence. I think my mum, typical mum, she put like a sort of a special blanket, like you do when you have like a sort of, your best china or your tea service, you have like a blanket. It was like sort of regarded as this great, amazing mystical object. But I remember we rented a video for my birthday, and the video we rented was The Empire Strikes Back, of all things. I can't remember how much it cost, but this was back in the day when, just buying video, again, try to explain this to those kids these days. The thought of buying an actual video of a film was just sort of unheard of, really.
Yeah.
So
we hired one in about 83 because of something meant we had to cancel our summer holiday, and so to sort of make up for it, they hired a video. And I think it was around the time that Blake 7 Series 4 was being repeated. But then I think it still took us a while. Maybe we did have one by about 85 or 86, having had a trial over the summer. And certainly by 88, I had my own one in my bedroom by then. So it shows how they've gone down in price, probably.
Sure.
I definitely recorded season 25 and season 26 in my bedroom, and had the tapes all freshly marked up and everything.
Yeah, I think by the sort of mid to late 80s, we had the thing where, the main telly downstairs, now have this thing called teletext, which my dad was very enamoured of, and so the old black and white, sort of made its way upstairs to my bedroom. I'm trying to remember if I actually took a telly away with me to university or not. I'm not sure I did have a TV for the first year, thinking about it. Yeah, strange. And obviously no smartphones or anything back in those days.
I did have a TV at university, but no, I don't think the TV reception was very good. I don't know if I guess the bed, for the first few months I was in digs with the family, and I guess they didn't the bedroom I was in didn't necessarily have another aerial socket to plug in, so I just had like a little area on top of my TV, which meant that the reception was.
I can picture it already. Yes.
Yeah.
You'd be sort of twisting the thing. Yeah.
Because it was around the time when that Ghostwatch was on. That was my first. Yeah. That was my first term at university, and so I never. People asked me what I thought. Like years later, asked me what I thought of it, and I didn't think much of it because I couldn't see it, half of it. I think I was away that weekend, so I set the video for it. When I came back, it was unwatchable. I think for about 5 years or more, like TV for me was basically watching videos, because wherever I lived, there wasn't great TV reception, either at university or at the place I lived at. My first couple of jobs.
Yeah, I think for us, I was at uni between 1991 and 95, and it did seem to be more, as you say, sort of focused around watching videos, or like sort of so-and-so would have a copy of, Aliens, and you had a copy of Aliens, so it's, let's do a swap, we'll sort of take turns watching that, and then, someone else has got whatever it is, Superman 2, and so there was all this kind of sort of, not bartering, but sort of definitely sort of like swapping of sort of various VHS tapes, I would say.
And also, you could go to the video shop and not. I don't remember sort of necessarily loaning videos from like Blockbuster, but Blockbuster was also quite a good place for £5 videos, or like of things like Evil Dead or Friday the 13th or Halloween, and I think even then I was more into collecting. Adding to my collection rather than just borrowing and giving back. So I'd consider a film if it was in the £5 bin, as long as it was a film I kind of knew had a reputation.
I never got into collecting videos. Once I'd sort of left home for uni, and then sort of when I moved to London, it was more, I guess, still very much collecting CDs and books. When I actually started living in London, which would have been in 1997, I lived in Camden, which was interesting because it was in that sort of slightly post-Britpop phase.
Yeah.
So like you'd had sort of, I'd say, what years would you call the peak of Britpop? I'd say probably early to mid-90s.
Yeah.
And I think sort of Blur's Blur album with, was it Beetlebum on, was very much the sort of come down from Britpop.
Yeah.
And it just tied in really sort of thematically with me where I was, because I'd been working in London, I'd split up from a relationship and broken my arm as well. So all these, sometimes, as they say, these things happen in threes. I had all these life events going on, and then I found myself living in Camden, which is meant to be this sort of swinging, sort of amazing Britpop hub. But of course, it wasn't as amazing as it's portrayed. It was just like, in some respects, just another sort of area of London. But you would have that situation sometimes where you'd bump into Damon Albarn and Graham Coxon, I remember bumping into as well. Damon Albarn spoke to us, but that's probably because he took a shine to my female housemate. So yeah, I think that's the only reason he was so chatty with us.
Yeah.
But there'd be other people. I think there was one time actually, and again, me and my then flatmate just kind of looked at each other, sort of like dumbstruck. We're just like walking down Camden High Street, and Nick Cave and Kylie just walked past us. And we just kind of looked at each other, sort of dumbstruck, said, "Did that just happen?" So you would.
I saw Jarvis Cocker on the tube once, but I was with somebody who didn't know who he was, which was embarrassing because they kept asking, "Who is that? Who is that?" Like, if you didn't know who Jarvis Cocker was in 1995, then where had you been? It was embarrassing.
True. I got to see Pulp play at Finsbury Park in 1998. I think it was summer 1998. They released This Is Hardcore. So again, it's kind of their come down from Britpop album, isn't it? So they'd done Different Class, which came out a few years previously, and then, you know, This Is Hardcore had a very different sort of feel to it. And I remember Pulp were headlining, Catatonia were playing as well, Bentley Rhythm Ace, if you remember them, they were playing. And trying to think who else was on the bill.
I saw Pulp twice. I saw them once in Birmingham in 1995, in late 1995, around the time that Different Class came out. And I bought the tickets not knowing where I would be, because this was supposed to be October 1995. I didn't actually know where in the world I would be, having finished university just soon after I bought the tickets. But as it was, I did get back. I did get back up there, and went. And then I think I saw them at some in the noughties, maybe at the Royal. I'm sure it was at the Royal Albert Hall, although I can't remember who I went with, because I recently mentioned it to Callum, and he sort of didn't. I thought I went with Callum, because I went to most things with Callum, but it must have been that I went with somebody else. But I definitely saw them. I think it was for some charity sort of thing as well. So I just can't remember who I went with. But and I saw Catatonia when they did their first album, so they hadn't really started being that successful. But their first album, Way Beyond Blue, is probably their best album anyway.
Right, because the second one was the big one, was it? Which was it International Velvet?
International Velvet, yes. Yeah.
In Salisbury, was there like a local sort of venue where you would get sort of reasonable sized bands coming to? Or did you have to travel further afar?
Probably was, but I wasn't really in Salisbury when I was going to gigs, because even when I went back to Salisbury in '94 and had my placement for 9 months and lived back in Salisbury, even though I was at university, I didn't really start going to gigs until beginning of '95. So and there hasn't been that much time sort of after that '94 where I've lived there to go to gigs there. So that I can imagine where some of the people go to, but I've never actually been to a gig in my adult life in Salisbury. I may have been to something with my parents.
In Cambridge, we've got the Cambridge Corn Exchange, which is like a sort of medium-sized hall-type venue thing, and I wouldn't really call it a gig. I can remember the first gig I went to with my mates, and it was like the most un-rock and roll thing possible. It was the classical guitarist John Williams. So yeah, not very rock and roll at all. But did go to see other things. I mean, I remember seeing James there a couple of times, who were very good to see back in the day. Yeah. That was quite a sort of, definite sort of vibe going on, and quite a lot of us from Sixth Form College would go and see. I think we saw They Might Be Giants as well. So we'd see sort of various.
I was quite into that. I never saw They Might Be Giants, but I was kind of into them quite a lot in that pre-Britpop sort of very early 90s.
The same. Yeah, he would buy all the albums, and then I'd do copies of them, so I can hear Particle Man going off in my head.
Yeah, because the album that had Birdhouse in My Soul was like their third or fourth or whatever album, but then they released those earlier ones again that had probably not been released or had been released without anybody knowing they'd been released over here. So suddenly there was quite a lot you could get hold of around that sort of 91, 92, because there was all their old albums coming.
That kind of dovetails into R.E.M., because I think Birdhouse in Your Soul was meant to be seen as a sort of kind-hearted sort of R.E.M. pastiche. If you think about the sort of vocal sort of mannerisms, it's a bit sort of Michael Stipe. But the same thing happened with R.E.M., didn't it? They had like the big hit with Shiny Happy People. And, a number of people didn't realise they'd been going for years, and then had like about 5 or 6 albums out beforehand.
Shiny Happy People it's one of those songs that I know R.E.M. themselves don't like much, and didn't, even though it was a big hit for them. I think only one of them, perhaps the guy who wrote it, I think that's why it's not on. Well, it may have been since, but when they did their first greatest hits, it wasn't on there because they vetoed, the other 3 or 2 or whatever, vetoed it being on there. But as a B-52s fan as well, I took against that, because that's kind of like an insult to Kate Pearson, to slag off your own song, and when you've got a guest singer on it, who is part of the main reason it's a good song. But
this was, I think, still when I was at sixth form when it came out, and I was in a band and we played it. So I've got, again, mixed feelings about it, because I think sometimes when we played it, it came out really well because we had like a sort of, again, we had our own sort of guest, Kate Pearson, who would come up and sort of sing those bits. But other times we played it, not due to any fault of hers whatsoever, she'd be coming at the wrong time and we'd still be in the middle of a verse, and so yeah, when you mention that song, sort of, I've got my own sort of mixed memories of it. So yeah, it's strange. But then, as I said, I went to uni in Hertford, literally Hertfordshire, as part of the Hatfield. Well, it started as the Hatfield Poly Business School and then turned into the University of Hertfordshire. And we were sort of fairly close to London, so we go to see some gigs. I remember seeing, this shows my age, I remember seeing Pop Police itself at the Brixton Academy, which was quite a riotous event, and then falling really badly ill with the flu for about 2 weeks after. That's probably more what I remember from the gig, is just getting really ill as a result. So yeah, we'd go into London sometimes to see gigs.
My friend Kerry, who I ended up flat sharing with at university, was very into pop release itself, but more so the Wonder Stuff and Jesus Jones and Kingmaker and people like that. I think for a while after we left university, I couldn't listen to Wonder Stuff because he played it so much, and it I had to have a break.
Through no fault of their own, I absolutely despise Deacon Blue, because I shared a house with someone for a year and all they played, try not to swear, all they played was Deacon Blue all the time. And yeah, it's just I just can't listen to it anymore.
Deacon Blue are kind of weird because I would have said I don't like them, but then there was, I think maybe, I don't know if it was their last album that they did before that. I know they've probably come back together again and they have, but there was an album that had Will We Be Lovers on. That they were hits, but they weren't as well known as their early stuff. So I would have said, I think it was the chart. It was one of those things where the chart show plays a particular song, and I'd have been thinking, I don't like Deacon. Oh, actually, I might listen to it. Oh, I quite like this. And I was kind of so I do own that. I only own that particular album of Deacon
Blue. Thinking back to that sort of early 90s thing as well, sort of, I mean, would you say, was it the thing that they would call, like, Pop-Elite itself, the Wonder Stuff, and Atomic Dust? Was it all called Grebo at the time?
Yeah, that's what Enemy and Melody Maker gave the nickname for it. Yeah.
And you had sort of various other bands as well, weren't necessarily Grebo, but sort of were around at the time, like the new Fast Automatic Daffodils rings a bell. And yeah, as you said, Kingmaker. And I remember going out with a girl at uni who really liked Sultans of Ping. Or was it Sultans of Ping FC? I can't remember if that was their fault.
Yeah, I don't think I know much from them, but I know the name certainly.
I think they were the ones that did Where's My Jumper? Is it them or the Franklin Waters? Yeah.
I think I probably like Jesus Jones best out of the and maybe Kingmaker, although he didn't play those ones quite as much. And Jesus Jones were a bit more poppy indie. Well, I suppose Wonder Stuff was as well, but there was a sort of difference anyway.
I liked Jesus Jones up to a point, but being, a very, very amateur musician, and of a Saturday going around various music shops in Cambridge and getting glared at by, people working there, Jesus Jones always seemed to remind me of the people that hadn't really sort of made it in the music business and were working in music shops. So they always seemed a bit too sort of professional for me. I think I preferred sort of the Stuffies. They seemed a bit more sort of down to earth, shall we say. So
did you because I would say that, I mean, I obviously I have lots of footage of me from around that time, and I look younger, and I once cut my fringe by mistake because I was like, I don't want. When I first went to university, I'd never been to a hairdresser's other than the one near my parents, and I was a bit scared about going to a hairdresser's, so I tried to do it
that as well. Yeah,
I tried to do it myself and cut my fringe too short. But generally, I'd say that sort of period at university, I don't have embarrassing haircut haircuts or fashions, because Britpop was quite a jeans and t-shirt time. It wasn't like the 80s, but I know there were some people who have the exception if you were into a particular type of music that did have a different image around that time. But I don't think I can say that that's the case with me. But
I think with Britpop, you could there would be a bit of a Britpop unicorn sort of bordering a bit more on sort of Jamiroquai style of like Puma. Oh no, not Puma, Adidas Gazelle trainers with like jeans, maybe slightly flared jeans and a retro t-shirt. But then I can distinctly remember being in Camden, sort of in like 97, 98 and seeing people, dressed pretty much like John Pertwee circa 1971, free shirts and all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think had I been just even 5 years younger, I might have more embarrassing photos in the attic. But although I'm sure there's plenty of embarrassing Sutton Park moments, but just not necessarily what I was wearing. But
I've not got many photos myself, but I'm sure I could probably get someone to dig out a photo of me when I had long hair and I had my leather jacket, which was de rigueur for the time. I've been watching a bit of the TV coverage of the, stuff the Queen and everything, and they're in Edinburgh, and it's reminded me, I had a friend that was at uni in Edinburgh, and I hitchhiked up once to Edinburgh. It was quite sort of daring of me. I mean, these days, just walking down to the shops is quite a challenge for me in terms of like, not sort of necessarily physically, but like mentally, it's like, that means I've got to sort of probably talk to people and like sort of interact. And I can't face it. Like I was mortified when I went out earlier and I was listening to a podcast. I've been catching various podcasts over the last few days. So I was enjoying, I'll try and say this carefully, I was enjoying a bit of the cinematic sausage. I think it was the Blue Lamp episode. And my headphones cut out, the battery ran out. It was like, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm stuck in the supermarket and like I can hear people. So that was quite traumatic. But there's a picture of me somewhere with long hair. I did sort of have my hair sort of grow to a certain length. But then I think it was my mum had this weird logic because it was coming up to my finals. And she said, I need to get my hair cut because it can interfere with my thinking or my writing or something when I was hunched over a desk. Which I wasn't entirely sure of the sort of logic of. I was definitely, when it came to exams, even though I vaguely prospered in my exams, but I was definitely one of those people in the exams that, and they'd say, you may turn over your papers and start writing. And about 5 minutes later, everyone there scribbling away, and I'm there like a sort of meerkat, sort of sticking my head up, looking around. What's everybody doing? Well, why are they so busy with stuff? I'm not busy. I can't focus on this. I better write something so, I don't fail this exam. So, yeah, I was always that person that was like sort of not sort of hunched over a desk doing exams because I was like far too sort of away with the fairies to think about other things, really. So it's interesting. I worked at the NHS. We went through a reorganisation in 2019. And so me being me, the week of when I had to do various sort of tests and jumping through hoops, I decided to go to the Singapore Grand Prix. And you think sort of, once you finish school or whatever, or uni, that's it, you're done with exams. But no, like a bad horror movie, they come back and they attack you again. And we're going through another reorganisation at work. And there's a possibility that I'm going to have to do some more tests and things, which fills me with, the same amount of dread, but we shall see about that.
Got the same thing a bit with my proofreading course.
Indeed, yeah.
The second course involves doing coursework, and although I was fine doing the first course where you're sort of doing it online and not having to interact with anyone, the thought of having a tutor who marks my work is sort of a bit scary because it's not happened for. It's not even necessarily a subject that I would say, oh well, I'm definitely very good at this. So I've sort of, partly because of my arthritis, rheumatism, whatever it is, I wasn't able. I had to sort of put a hold on doing the coursework anyway. Although I'll probably start considering doing it again soon. But, and they've given me a bit more time. Unfortunately, it's one of those courses where you pay for it, but they kind of say oh, you should do it in 6 months, because I'm sure you could do it in 6 months if you didn't have the problems I've had recently. But I think there's also a sort of confidence thing in there as well. It's sort of, you think, well, there must be lots of other people doing this course who are much better or much more observant.
I know, that's always the sort of fear, isn't it? Like, as I said, when it comes to like work, and as I say, if I'm going through a merger thing, there's like that sort of classic sort of thing of putting yourself down a bit and thinking, oh, I'm rubbish, everyone's going to be better than me at this, and like you're starting from that sort of bad mindset, and you've got to sort of drag yourself out of it. So I'm trying to not think about sort of my potential sort of merger test redundancy situation, and just sort of carry on with other things. I mean, one thing which is study of sorts is obviously I relearning French, I would say. So, and there's this sort of possibility at some point that I'll need to take or I will sort of take another qualification in French if I decide, I mean, it's a bit of a way off, but if I want to get French citizenship, then yeah, you definitely have to sort of show a certain level of sort of comprehension with French. My wedding in France was quite interesting because I was kind of briefed a bit, so I kind of knew when to sort of say oui and no and nod and this, that and the other. But I did have also a friend of a friend translating for me, and I gave my wedding speech. I gave 2 different wedding speeches. I think they were different in content. I gave my wedding speech in English and French, and that was it. The best man speech. I had 2 best men. Bit of a long story, but one of them actually lives in France, so one best man speech in French and the other one did a best man speech in English. And the one in English, I think, completely went over the Frenchies' heads, and it was if I was to say, it was quite Tropy-esque. I think you would understand what I meant. And like I was there giving them absolute daggers because they were like sort of making light of my sort of romantic history and this, that and the other, and sort of using various means in order to humiliate me. And all these Frenchies here just smiling away, without any awareness of what they were talking about.
Steely, you've still got time for you to ask a question. Steely has a question about. Yes, you do, don't you? He wants to know a bit more about the cat cafe in Singapore, because you haven't told us that much about that. I've seen photos, but Dealey wants to know.
So, I think cat cafes originated. I'm told they actually originated in Korea, not Japan. But I mean, you could split the difference. I think they started with people living in rented accommodation that weren't allowed to have pets. So they'd go to these cat cafes, and you'd go there and you could buy sort of, you know, hot drinks and snacks and things and sort of interact with the cats. And I think the first cat cafe I went to is when I was in Japan in 2015. And it was completely innocuous, the location of it. First of all, I wouldn't have stood a chance of finding it if I hadn't spoken to the concierge at the hotel. I literally had to say, I've seen this cat cafe in the Lonely Planet, you know, and then he had to sort of get a taxi and tell the taxi driver exactly where to go, because it was just in this very nondescript office block. You know, it was just like on the third floor of this office block. You would never tell. And I went there, and yeah, it was a very sort of Japanese experience and very sort of polite. And I distinctly remember that whilst I was there, I was talking to the manager, the manageress, and explaining how I was sort of, you know, doing a bit of a sort of round the world trip. And one of the reasons I'd been able to do it is because my cat had died. And I showed them a picture of my old cat, Holly, and she just burst into tears when I was telling her the story about my cat, you know, passing away, even though, you know, Holly had a fairly good innings at the age of 13 and stuff. So that was my first cat cafe. And then I'm not sure exactly why or how I stumbled upon the one in Singapore. I think I must have seen a video on YouTube, because it's one of those things when you're going somewhere, you think, oh, what else? Because it's in an area called Bugis, which has got like a sort of undercover markets where you can sort of buy all kind of sort of touristy things, and there's places to eat as well. But just next to it is this cat cafe, but again in just a completely nondescript office block. And Angelique was obviously very sort of keen to go. And I think now, for the times that we've been to Singapore, we always try and sort of pencil in a visit. And it obviously depends on how the cats are feeling, if they want to sort of, you know, be friendly or not, because they've got like a little area where they can effectively hide. But I would say when we were there, we were there for about an hour, and you paid something like £7.50, and you got a free drink with that. So we had like a can of Fanta or whatever it was, and we were there for an hour, and there was probably about sort of 5 or 6 cats roaming about, but probably in total they have about 20 cats at the cat cafe. If you're on Instagram, I mean, if you just search for Cat Cafe Singapore, I mean, there's a few, but it's the one in Bugis. And it is funny because I've been there sort of several times now. I sort of recognise certain cats and do that thing where, you know, I'm talking to the cats and say, oh, we've got a cat at home, Pussycat, and he's called Monroe, and like, we're really missing him. And the cat's sort of looking at you thinking, why are you talking about your cat? You know, this is about me, you know, where are my treats? So, no, it's good. It's a good place to go to, and something a bit different.
One in London that I nearly went to a few years ago, and we had it booked, and then I think the day we were supposed to go, I think the weather was absolutely atrocious, and maybe there was engineering works which we didn't know about when we booked it, and it was just, oh no, we're going to have to not go. We never rescheduled, unfortunately, but yeah.
The Cat Cafe in Leeds, I think, has just shut down, being a victim of COVID, and I think now with the sort of the worries about sort of energy costs, I think it is in the process of shutting down. And very sad, I think they got burgled a few times, which is awful as well. So I think they've just decided they're closing it down. I think the same people have another one in Nottingham, which I've been past but not been to. But yeah, a bit sad. But Monroe is due his vaccinations soon. He's booked in for the end of the month.
Yeah.
But Angelique's taken him to the vet because it's a bit of good cop, bad cop. He really doesn't like it when I take him to the vet. And Angelique's much more diplomatic. So she'll be sorting that out. But the main cat news, I guess, is how he's got this friend stroke interloper called, well, we call him Fluffy. It's basically another black cat with a fluffy tail. But, you know, very original. We call him Fluff. Who keeps coming to say hello. But, yeah, Monroe does not want anything to do with him. So there's been a few standoffs. And there's a bit of a sort of turf war over who gets the roof on next door's shed. So I think today Monroe's winning that because I've seen him on the roof earlier. But it's an ongoing situation. So yeah, still to be monitored.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in terms of the Cat Cave in Singapore, we went on our sort of grand tour in the summer, but it was kind of a sort of, how should I call it, a sort of final blowout, for want of a better word, because just not sure when we'll be doing anything like that again in the near future. In previous years, because I've got a friend that lives in Singapore, I've been over to the Grand Prix, which is the end of this month, September, but there's no chance of going to that. Just the airfares are just horrifically expensive. So in terms of our travel, we might go to France for Christmas, and next year, who knows? Difficult to say. But I definitely think we'll be spending quite a lot of time at home. Yes.
Well, I suppose Didi has he's moved on. So are you telling me we have to stop? Is that what you're saying?
We're going an hour, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should stop as well because Angela will think I'm being abducted or something. And I need to get another cup of tea. But as all. Yeah.
Good to catch up.
Indeed. Watch this space in terms of any musical offerings that will come your way. As I say, in some respects, I've just sort of stepped back a bit to sort of think, right, what bits are working, what bits aren't. And so I started on one new thing yesterday, and it might be that I ditch both of them and start on a third new thing tomorrow, but we'll see. It depends how work pans out this week as well. We are pretty much going to be here most weekends now, I think. I mean, the only time we're going away is the 21st of October, which is like the school half term. We're going to Keswick for a few days.
Yeah, that's actually when I'm going to Kent. I didn't know that was half term week. That's annoying. I'm worried about I'm surrounded by but anyway.
And that trip, well, I mean, as usual, it will depend on the weather, but it'll be different from my trip that I did over the bank holiday, which was a solo one, where I sort of very much went uphill and down Dale. Because even though, I mean, I guess a bit like you in some respects, even though Angela loves the Lake District, loves the scenery and stuff, she's not going to be sort of wanting to sort of, be out all day tramping up mountains and things. She tends to have a rule of, must be back in the pub by 2 p.m. kind of thing. So yeah, it'll be a bit more relaxing than my previous trip. Although having said that, sort of, it's definitely changing Keswick. The people I stayed with over the bank holiday weekend, they've decided to sell up their guest house. They've been there for nearly 20 years, I think it is. And they've decided for various reasons to sell. I mean, they're retiring, but just, COVID was difficult for them. What's also happening, which is kind of now having a sort of cumulative effect, is that a lot of the guest houses are being sold and turned into holiday lets. Because if you own a holiday let, you don't have to wake up at the crack of dawn and start cooking breakfasts or, sort of make up beds or wash sheets or do all the other things. What you tend to do, you buy your property and then you basically just get an agency to do all the sort of tricky stuff for you, and they take your cut and then you sort of take your cut. So it's sort of definite sort of feeling that sort of things are changing. And the bad thing is for people, people that live there locally, it puts even more of a squeeze on the housing market. So you'll hear, like, when you go into pubs and stuff, like people who are sort of working in a pub in Keswick, they're like coming in from like Cockermouth or further afield. It's like, whew, that's pretty.
Every time I go back to Braithwaite, there's less and less. There's more and more owned by Holiday Property Bond, and less and less owned by people who probably grew up there.
Sure. And I must admit, as I'm getting older now, I'm kind of sort of definitely morphing into my dad, because the allure of staying in a guest house and going out to the pub every night, be it for drinking or for food, is starting to wear thin, because it's just too darn expensive. It really is. It's just like, it just really adds up. So, and I think there could be a time when we go in the future that we'll just rent a place and just, you'll have the flexibility, for starters, of not this breakfast is at 8:30, which you get with quite a lot of guest houses. Because the problem when they say breakfast is it's 8:30. By the time you finished and try and park up for your walk, all the spaces are gone. So,
there's always a possibility in the future if I get a bit more mobile, a bit more energy, that I could get something in Braithwaite again, and at a time when you were up there as well.
Sure. I was going to say vice versa. If I see somewhere and say, right, this is booked, because relatively speaking, I mean, you'd probably have to do at least one change, but you can get the train up to Penrith.
And I usually get a bus from Penrith.
Yeah, and it's only about sort of 20-30 minutes on the bus from like Penrith to Braithwaite, isn't it? So yeah, definitely a possibility. And as I say, I don't think we're necessarily going to be doing any of our far-flung adventures at all. But no, it's interesting how things are changing, very much so.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you. I will speak to you soon in some shape or form. And
yeah.
Bye-bye, Deals. And yes, I'll get Angelique to say hello.
Yeah.
In an inimitable way as well. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Well, listeners, that's all we've got time for. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Muffley. And, I'm sorry it took a while to get into the actual episode, because the suggestions for I always make this mistake, don't I? Getting them to suggest guests, and they come up with ridiculous suggestions. Anyway, nobody's around, so I think I can probably get to the end of the episode without being interrupted. That's what you might think, Paul. Thank you, Yeti Uncle John. All right, well, thank you for listening. I'm sure Muffley will be back. I'm sure the regulars will be back. I know for sure that I'll be back. So, join us again soon. We've got plenty of episodes in the can. You take care. We'll say goodbye for now. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye. Yeah, goodbye. Well, Paul, it was lovely to have Muffley back on the show. I realise now that I was quite off the mark with my suggestions. I don't know why I didn't think about Muffley. I guess I was really off the mark. I can't explain it.
Yes, well, at least I suggested people who actually do appear on the show sometimes.
You did, Ig, yes. That was quite astute of you. But, It's nice that we have some new voices on the show this year, isn't it, Paul? It is very nice, yes. It's very nice indeed. We've got plans for other episodes with Muffley as well. I better not say anything there. We don't, just in case. The year is racing on, Paul. There's only so much more you can achieve before 2023. That year, that big year. Yes, thank you, Yeti Uncle John. It's a very special year, isn't it, Paul? I wouldn't say that. Well, if something big happens to you in that year, in 2023. Oh, yes, you become very old. Thanks, Cromitty. I mean, I'm surrounded by old folk here. I mean, Cromitty, you're hardly a spring chicken, and neither is Yeti Uncle John, and Ick, I don't know how old you are.
You don't want to know. It doesn't compute.
Anyway, I can hear the theme music coming. Let's not discuss 2023 quite yet. I'm happy to remain in my 40s for as long as they last.
Oh, yes, Paul. Oh, dear, oh, dear.
Dear, oh, dear, yes. All right. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, listeners.
Oh, goodbye. I'm not saying goodbye. There's still another bit to come after the theme music, and I intend to be in it. Oh, great.
I gotta go now. Bye.
I want to go with you.
Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye, 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 goodbye.
It's been good, but yeah, definitely time to come home now.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
Oh dear, what's going on now? Oh, it's the Shy Life podcast.
Let's go.
I have a voice.
I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice.
We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
I'm still here, Paul. I thought you might be. Yes, I'm still here. Yes. Look, I've got a range of merchandise for you. I thought you might like it. A range of merchandise? I know you've opened your Redbubble shop. I've seen some of the things with the logos on. But this is commemorative merchandise I've knocked up specially. Have you now? Commemorative for what? The second appearance of Muffley on tour on the show. But he's been on the show loads of times. I mean, yes, fair enough, it's the second time we've chatted. Yes. This is commemorative stuff. I don't know if there's a demand for it. No offence to Muffley, but I don't know. People aren't really buying much merch, really. Come on, Paul, have a look. It's a T-shirt. There's a T-shirt? Yes. It's a picture of you and Muffley. I took it off the Skype footage. But really? Did you have to? I hadn't done my hair. Oh, you've hardly got any hair. Thank you. Yes, it's nice, isn't it? It's a lovely T-shirt. I can see people wearing that. Why did you choose that particular shot? I'm mid-talking. My mouth is half open. It's a weird sort of angle. Yes, Paul, well, that's how I see you. I'm sorry? No, that's how I see you, with a weird expression on your face. Do you now? Did you have to choose those colours? Why didn't you just... If you had to choose that photo, why didn't you just print it in colour rather than... What is that? That's like magenta and gold? I've never seen those two colours together. Oh, I think they work quite well. Do you? I'm not sure that anyone could recognise us from that photo. A magenta and gold version of Muffley and Mr. Yeti. Oh, I can recognise you. Yeah, but you know where you got the photo from. I guess so. Is there anything else in this range? Yes, it's a bit like your Redbubble account. By the way, why did you call your Redbubble account Snowman73 or whatever you called it? Why didn't you call it Shy Yeti? Well, I already had an account with that name, and I could have. I guess I should have just opened a new one, but I don't know. Does it matter? It's all about branding, Paul. Dear, oh dear, I have to give you a good talk on branding. Will you? Well, great. So what? There's just the T-shirts, or there's a mug. There's a mug. There's a hat, and there's a mini skirt, and there's lots of things like things for phone cases and everything. Hey, Uncle John, I don't know why you didn't pick a better photo. We could have posed. We're probably going to meet up sometime. We could have posed for a photo. Even then, I think I need to have a lie down. Yeah, you go and do that, Paul. Have a think about which of these merchandising options you want to purchase. Yes. Thanks, Muffley. Thanks for being on the show. I need to lie down. Oh, dear. Dear, oh, dear. He's got no stamina, that boy. No stamina.
Oh, God, what is that? Is that slime? It's slime. It's slime. Yeah, get over here and clean up that slime. Oh, kitty, Dee. Purr, kitty. Oh, I love Dee. Man, was that worth it or not? Oh, my goodness. That was a darling little shoe. This is just the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
579. 579.
Whoa, I love that one. Great show, Paul. Yep, that was a good show.
See you later.